Hey guys, it's M4J here and welcome back to Global Ventures here on Planet Coaster. Now last time out we built the end of the ride, the Reform Club once more, the interior rather than the exterior this time, and today we are working on the sort of back end of the ride, sort of the third act as it were. Now you'll see me rebuild a lot of stuff during this. I'll build, then I'll rebuild, then I'll rebuild again, and then I'll keep constantly tweaking and changing, trying to make it right, basically. And even like right now, I'm still not entirely sure that this is what the ride is going to do. There's a lot of things that I'm still not 100% happy with, and I'm not 100% certain of, but I've given it a go, and it's kind of a speculative look at what the ride could perhaps do. One of the things that I'm really not certain about is how many show scenes we actually need, because the first few, so we've got the interior bit which I've not finished yet before the first drop, then we have exterior London including the Reform Club, then we have the crossing the Channel, then we have Paris, then we have Gare de Lyon where they get on the Orient Express, then we've got the lift hill which is the climb up into the Alps, and then we've got the scene of them pretty much at the top of the Alps having been kicked off the train. From there, I don't really know where the story is going to go, because I've looked at the book and I've looked at the film, and they kind of skip through a lot of countries in terms of locations visited. I've not read the book still, so I think there might be a lot of descriptive elements to do with countries in the book. In the film, particularly the Disney film that I've sort of taken inspiration from, they have a brief stop in Turkey, and then it's pretty much straight on to China. So I don't know whether I'm going to copy that or not, and that does create a bit of a conundrum. And I mean, there's a couple of conundrums to do with this ride. One is to do with the ride system, which I will talk about momentarily, because it's more of a limitation than an actual issue. So I'm not too fussed by that right now. But I've shortened the ride quite considerably with this rebuild that you see me doing right now. I've also changed the layout of the show building. I've simplified the show building layout a lot more. So I will have to do a little bit more of a facade tweak once the ride is complete. But I think I've saved myself a little bit of time in doing so. And I've also removed some of the eyesore elements sticking up above some of the facade, which wasn't particularly pleasant to look at, if I'm being completely honest with you all. So yeah, this little bit here I'm just removing. I'm basically taking out most of the top floor. As you can see, I've removed the third lift hill from the ride, which is the one that takes you from the Alps scene up into like the attic, really, of the building. That's been removed, so the overall drop height of the ride is a lot shorter now than it was before, which I'm okay with, because I think the drop was a little bit too big. I went a bit too over the top with it. So I'm kind of glad that I scaled that down somewhat and made it a little bit more realistic. Plus it ties in a lot better now. So the idea of the drop was meant to be a waterfall. You end up cascading down a waterfall. And having it right near the end of the ride didn't really make sense, because the end of the story is basically them going through the US from San Francisco across to New York, getting on a boat, I think, in the book, and actually I think it's a boat in the film as well. And then they end up flying back to London from the boat. That wouldn't have worked with a waterfall. So moving the drop to sort of the halfway point-ish of the ride, sort of going into the final third rather than it being the final third, kind of makes a lot more sense, when looking at the narrative. I'm really struggling to get my words out today for some reason as well. I don't know why. But I've kind of utilised the space a little bit more within the building as well. So the queue line has been slightly extended, and it has a new dedicated room, which does still overlook the Parisian section of the ride. And I think there will be another, in fact I think there is another observation window that looks down into sort of one of the finale rooms of the ride. But I felt the queue was a little bit too short. The globe room might end up getting removed completely and becoming part of the ride scene, the London scene in the room next door. That might sort of impede upon it. And then the track layout has been considerably shortened, and I think this little wall that I'm building here, it shifts over slightly. You'll see what I mean a little bit more once the queue line has been rebuilt. So this whole room effectively has now been split into two. Half of it is new queue line, the other half is show scene. Because it was a bit big, and even after I've done this rebuild, it's still a little bit big, so it needs to be scaled back some more. As I said, I'm not really too sure what I feel about this, and I know that's not the best thing to say. I'm supposed to be really, you know, elated by it and say this is really good, but I think I'm going to turn towards the Planet Coaster community in the not too distant future and make a Reddit post and just ask for a little bit of advice, because I feel like I'm on the right lines, but I've never really done a project this big before in any of my theme park playthroughs in any game. So I'm very new to all of this, and it's about finding the right mix really between, you know, you want the ride to be long enough to be entertaining but not too long that it becomes boring, and that's something that Disney rides have been criticised for in the past. Particularly at Epcot, some of the rides are very good, don't get me wrong, but a lot of them are sort of 20-25 minutes long, and I think the Universe of Energy was like half an hour from start to finish, and not everyone has that long an attention span. So trying to make that work, particularly in a park like this as well, where there's so many other rides on offer, not everyone would want to sit still for 20 odd minutes on a boat ride. So you've got to try and find that right mix, whilst at the same time not sacrificing the story. And that's where I'm struggling, because I think right now, I went into this video having too many show scenes, and I think I might have accidentally come out of this video with not enough show scenes. It very much depends on what I do with the story. There's a lot of countries that I'm probably going to have to skip now, because I've spent the first 5 scenes of the ride just in Europe. And admittedly, again in the film, once they get into sort of Asia, crossing from Europe into Asia at least, the plot speeds up quite a bit, and they skip through quite a few locations. And I think really they only stop in China because they want to explore Jackie Chan's character a little bit more. Otherwise, they probably would have skipped through that too. So it's a bit tricky. That's the word I'm looking for. It's a bit tricky trying to find the right balance and the right mix. And also with the space that I've given myself as well, it has been quite a challenge. But it's one that I'm still rising to. I'm not giving up just yet. And who knows, I might accidentally stumble across the perfect solution to the problem. One of the big issues I was actually having, you can see it right now, was trying to build this drop. And I used this term on City Skylines, and I'll use it again now. It's like trying to thread a needle. So you've got this big show scene above, you've got the Alps show scene, which is actually the highest point of the ride now, whereas it used to not be, whereas now it is. And then you've got this drop, and I'm trying to make the drop so that we can put some facades in and actually make it look like a waterfall without there being like a big rock wall in front, which there kind of is at the moment because some of the rocks do stick through the wall. So I'm going to have to decorate that a little bit more, and I'm going to try and make it look like you're actually falling off a cliff down a waterfall, which is not the easiest thing to do at the best of times, and it's certainly not the easiest thing to do when your space is heavily limited. So that was problem number 1. Problem number 2 is, what the hell do I do with the track layout after that? Because trying to snake it through all this gap here, over and under, if the station was at ground level it wouldn't be too much of an issue, but I've still got to put another lift hill in to get the boats back up to the unload level. And that also becomes a bit of a problem. So right now you can see I'm threading the track through, and I'm getting as close as I possibly can to each of these walls. And again, I'll do some facade moving in a second, and I'll start putting some diagonal walls in as well, because that was something else that was lacking. But it's been a real nightmare trying to do this end of the ride. And I looked at other dark rides that have been opened quite recently, and one of the ones I was looking at was Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, which is fantastic, by the way. If that doesn't win an award, I'd say that's criminal activity. But the way they utilise the space, so the one that's going into California in Toontown, that's a new build. They're building a whole new show building and putting the ride in there. So that one might have a slightly different layout to the one in Florida. The one in Florida was built in the show building that used to belong to the Great Movie Ride. So they had a very limited space in which to build this new ride. And each wall within the centre of the building, on the immediate other side of it, there is another show scene. And that's what I wanted to do with this ride, and also with Tech Tours, which is over in the City of the Future section of the park. I wanted to make these areas as compact as possible and literally have show scenes backing onto one another. And in real life, that's fine because you custom build the building and then you custom build the scenery to go into that part of the building. Whereas here, it's not that easy, mainly because, as I'm messing around with wall pieces here, mainly because the scenery elements in Planet Coaster are of a set size. And if you're trying to squeeze them into a small gap, chances are they'll poke through the wall. And you can't really do that with something like this when there's a show scene on the immediate other side of the wall. So you could try and get cute and clever and try and integrate the pieces together so that the back of one piece forms the front of another piece, if that makes sense. So you can almost, let's say you had a rock and you stuck the rock through the wall. You can have that rock act as part of a mountain on one side of the wall and part of a canyon on the other side of the wall. You can kind of make it work that way. Or you could just cover it up completely and use it as you know, a mold to build something else over the top of it. So, trying to think of a really good example. Maybe you hide it in a building facade or something like that and just cover it up completely and pretend it doesn't exist. But it's really, really tricky to try and find that balance. And that's the problem I've had with this project, is trying to squeeze things into a small enough gap and not having the scenery pieces that I really need in order to make it work. And it sounds like a complaint, and it isn't really, because I do like the game. I've always said I liked the game, and I really like the scenery pieces that are on offer. It's just unfortunate that even with the Theme Maker's Toolkit, there's no option to like scale objects, which is something I believe Parkitect does allow you to do. But Parkitect isn't as graphically, what's the word? Isn't as graphically advanced as Planet Coaster. So you can scale objects mainly because there's only a few like polygons that actually need to be scaled, whereas in Planet Coaster it's a whole different story. So you know, each game has its pros and cons, and I've tried to see people compare them in the past, and it's like comparing apples and oranges. They're both theme park games, but that's really where the similarities end. They both do completely different things. It's like 2 Point Hospital and Project Hospital. They're both games set in hospitals, but 2 Point Hospital is very much like a parody of a hospital, whereas Project Hospital is very realistic and, you know, down to earth and things like that. So they're very different games at their core. Where was I going with this? Oh yes. So these show scenes, a lot of the inspiration that I've taken when doing research for these rides has been to watch a lot of videos of, you know, even things like the Bubble Works at Chessington and the original Round the World in 80 Days at Alton Towers, and trying to see how they're integrating stuff together and sort of the gaps between show scenes and how they integrate those. Because things like Splash Mountain at Disney, you kind of go through a cave and that takes you into the next scene and it feels right because you're inside a mountain. Whereas Around the World in 80 Days, it's not obvious that you're in a building. And even, you know, It's a Small World kind of does this as well. You'll cross under an archway or something and suddenly you're in a different part of the world. And it's trying to do that whilst at the same time not having the benefits of this being truly dark. Because the lighting in Planet Coaster isn't quite as realistic as you'd like it to be for things like a dark ride. You have to kind of bury it underground for it to be truly dark, which again makes things a little bit difficult. Not impossible, but difficult. So yeah, I've struggled a little bit with the majority of this project, and I think the outcome will still be fine. I'm not worried about that at all. But you can kind of see here how I'm trying to squeeze track pieces very, very close together. This section of the ride is probably going to have quite a high ceiling as well, because this bit is supposed to be like Trafalgar Square running up the steps when he realizes that he is still within the 80 days. Because that's a spoiler alert, by the way, before I tell you the ending. Very big spoiler alert. If you don't know the ending of Around the World in 80 Days, and you don't want to know the ending of Around the World in 80 Days, then stop listening now. Mute the video for about 20 seconds. But effectively what happens is time difference is the critical factor. So especially in the film, again, I'm not 100% sure about the book, but in the film, he's led to believe, Phileas Fogg, that he hasn't done it within 80 days. Because in London, 80 days has passed before he gets back. However, as I think it's Passport 2 discovers, they've only seen 79 sunsets. Because around the world, the time constantly, especially if you go clockwise, which is what, or east, I should say. Probably shouldn't say clockwise on a 3D object, but they kept going east, and the further east you go, the further forward time goes. So, for example, the time difference between us and Western Australia is about, I think it's 9 hours at the moment. It might be 7. It does change to do with clocks going forward and back. I probably should stop saying these certain sentences and then saying "I think" at the end. But there's a massive time difference between us and Western Australia, and I know that because I have family over there. So in reality, Phileas Fogg did go around the world in 80 days. Within 80 days. He went round in 79 days. Even though in London 80 days had passed, only 79 days had passed to Phileas Fogg and Passport 2. It was either that or the other way around. So they saw 80 days, but in London there was only 79 sunsets. It was something like that. Again, it's been a while. I really should do my research. So I wanted to have a scene of Fogg sort of running up the stairs in celebration at Trafalgar Square. Even though Trafalgar Square is nowhere near the Reform Club, geographically speaking, I kind of wanted that to tie in nicely as to why you're climbing up a lift hill towards the end of the ride. So basically you're climbing up the stairs outside the National Gallery. And that's why, you know, there'll be quite a high ceiling, because it's meant to be an outdoors scene. All these scenes are really outdoors, apart from the Reform Club at the end. And Gare de Lyon, I suppose. So that's why it's all built like this. But it creates a lot of problems. Creates more problems than it solves, arguably, trying to make all this work. So if you're watching this, either from the Planco community, or if you're just watching this as one of my regular viewers, and you think you might have a solution to this problem, please do get in touch. I think I have a... I do. I have a Discord chat on my Discord, so you can talk about global ventures there. And I also have a Reddit where you can post ideas there too. What I should have done before I started this project was actually sketch out a track diagram of what I wanted the ride to do. And I could probably still go back and do that. Like, I could just take a top-down screenshot of the ride, split it into its rooms, and decide what goes where. I could well do that. Who knows? Because that'll probably work out quite well. This bit I'm building here, this is actually the new Q-line room. I don't know what's going to go in there even. Maybe just hang a hot air balloon from the ceiling or something. Because, I mean, in the film, Phileas Fogg is an inventor. I think in the book he's just a scientist. Might even just be a lord, actually, or, you know, just a regular rich man. I like the idea of going with the inventor idea, though, and having some of his inventions in that room. Maybe theme it to his workshop or something like that. There's a little window that I built looking down. I can't remember if I did it on camera or not, but I do go around and remove all the supports from the ride track soon and make it so that the building actually supports the ride track rather than these supports. In fact, this is me doing it now, I believe. There it is. Mainly so I can actually see what I'm doing a little bit more when I'm going through all these areas and mapping out what needs to go where and stuff like that. It just makes my life a little bit easier, you know? So yeah, even now I'm just looking at it, trying to come up with ideas. This show building is it's been a pain. I like it though. That's the thing, I like it. And looking at it now, it's the first time I've actually had a proper chance to look at it without building at the same time. And it does look... It looks on the large side, don't get me wrong. It is big, but it does look still to be quite realistic in terms of its size. I'm not too fussed about that anymore. Previously I was, but now it does look, as I say, on the realistic side, which I'm quite happy with. But yeah, some of the other areas of the ride, it might require a bit of a rework. Let's put it that way. Who knows? It might work out fine. I might just be overthinking it slightly. This set of walls here as well is quite annoying. One of the things I need to remember is this show building will get decorated. So the outside will stay the white, apart from where the facades are. The interior here, because I keep looking at it and thinking it's really big, it's really empty, and it's really boring looking. But you put some wallpaper on the walls here, and suddenly it looks a little bit nicer. And then you start hanging, you know, theming elements from the ceiling, and it starts looking a little bit nicer. And you move this wall, like I'm about to do here, so that it doesn't stick through the path, and it looks a little bit nicer. That just proves that I didn't build this path particularly straight, which again is a problem that I seem to run into a lot, is not building things to quite fit the area that I originally designated for them. Right, we are coming towards the end of this video though, so I am going to wrap things up very, very shortly. Like I said though, if you have any ideas for how to improve this, please do let me know, because I'm getting to the point where I almost want to work on something else just while I think about this, which I'm happy to do. You know, if people want me to move on to something else and come back to this, I'd like to do that. The reason I've stepped away from that is because I don't want to just constantly leave half-finished projects everywhere. But if that's what people want, I'll try my best to do it. We shall see. I think here as well I moved some door frames and stuff to make this look a little bit nicer too. There we go. Right, so I'm going to wrap up here. I'm going to let the music take over. And actually I always say that as well, and then by the time I finish talking, the video is pretty much finished anyway, so I'm probably not going to say that from now on. But I'm going to wrap things up here. I might even cut out a little bit of footage just so it lines up a little bit better, we'll see. But thank you very much for watching. Do hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, and of course if you're enjoying the series, and do please drop some comments down below if you have any ideas for what to do with this ride. Even if it's taking artistic license with the story, feel free to suggest ideas. I'm more than happy to discuss them. Some of them might be a lot better than what I can come up with, so yes, please do. Besides that, drop some comments down below with any other ideas that you have for the series, any other rides you'd like to see, any other themed countries you'd like to see as well, because I'm always open to exploring those ideas too. And besides that, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button. If you have already subscribed to the channel, thank you guys for your continued support, and until next time, I will see you soon.